One of the clients that I've made in my test group, he opened up about what he's been going through. I actually stand in a very neutral ground with the Tates because I can see a lot of value that they provide. In this case, it could be, your family, it could be your significant other, it could be, your child. What mental health struggles do men have that most women don't know about? Oh boy, so many. Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of Squared Away, which is the new podcast which I am launching today. This is going to be a podcast that I've actually wanted to do for a long time now, and today I just thought I'd pull the trigger. I was actually supposed to do today's episode with my friend Joe, but he had some situation to take care of, so we are going to postpone that for a later date, and I'm going to go ahead and get through this myself. All right, so what I did was I asked a couple questions in a few communities that I'm a part of regarding, any questions around masculinity, mental health, self-development, things that a lot of men struggle with, because I want to center this podcast around that, right? I want to kind of go a little deeper into my experiences throughout life. So I want to talk about my time and experience in the military. I want to talk about, my run-ins with situations to do with mental health, with relationships, finances, right? Just learning about all of those things, mentorships, cultivating healthy habits, beating some of the very crippling addictions that a lot of men struggle with, right? And that I have struggled with, and hopefully using myself and using the experiences of the guests that I bring on to help give the guys here, and even the girls who may be watching, a clearer perspective on just what we go through and how we can work together to sort of build a better community. So what I did was I asked a couple questions in some of the cohorts that I'm a part of, and just wanted to use this to flesh out some of the topics we're going to cover. And boy, the questions that I got asked were pretty mad, to say the least, right? And I think let's just kind of get into it. So the first question, these are from people within the Cortex community, and that's Dan Coe's cohort. So, big thank you to Dan and to all the wonderful people who commented on the post. So, questions from Joey Justice. All right, he asked, what are some of the biggest problems men are facing right now? In my personal opinion, I think that a lot of men are facing a masculinity crisis, which in tandem works with an identity crisis. Just using my own personal experience, 3 years ago, I was constantly chopping and changing between, what kind of pathway I wanted to go down, right? I wanted to head down a content creator's pathway, but then I wanted to learn more about videography. I wanted to pursue that. And then I found myself getting pulled back to the wellbeing space, and I wanted to bring all of it together. That within itself was kind of pulling me in different directions because I didn't have a clear vision of what my purpose was. And the reason why I didn't have a clear vision of what my purpose was is because, looking at this society that we're a part of, I left the military coming from a very directional standpoint, right? I was very focused on being a good medic, working within my team, working with my patients. After that, I transitioned into the medical field. And then after, the blip, that was the pandemic, hit. I don't know if I can talk too much about that, but basically that happened and the whole world was just sort of thrown into chaos. And then coupled with what we've been seeing on social media, where masculinity has been painted as this very oppressive sort of like movement, or this oppressive, like, I don't know, it's like an the way that it's being painted is like this, like it's evil, right? And as men, you know, we have more masculine traits. That's what makes a man, right? I'm sorry, I just, that's how it is, right? Men and women both have masculine and feminine traits to them, but men are predominantly more masculine. That's just common sense, right? I think that one of the greatest problems that men are facing is an identity crisis, because we've gone from a period of having clear focus and direction, and being in the role of our, you know, provider-like tendencies. And that doesn't necessarily mean being the primary breadwinner. It just means, you know, masculinity is so much more than that. I feel like masculinity itself has been reduced. It's got like it's been approached with a very reductionist mindset, where people think that, oh yeah, a man is literally just male aggression and, you know, trying to oppress women and keep them down and get them in a very subservient role and position to just, like, you know, strip away their power. There's in my opinion, that's got nothing to do with what masculinity actually is. I feel that masculinity is the perfect blend between harnessing controlled aggression to go out into the world and create and build and have drive and purpose, so that when we do meet with our feminine counterparts, we're able to create something. We're able to create a legacy, right? And now you've got, you know, the media saying that, you know, look, female empowerment is the biggest boom. Like, there's a big boom there in female empowerment. I think that with the feminist movement, they have moved from a position of wanting to be seen as equals and be treated equally within the working space, to now almost inverting like the chart, to now reducing men and keeping them down, right? And I'm not blaming it all on women. Please don't make, you know, as you are watching and hearing this, don't think that I blame women for this. No, I think that a lot of the downfall of masculinity is due to the lack of driven men, right? But you see, it's a self-destructive cycle, because we have ever more increasing divorce rates. We have the nuclear family being torn apart by the hedonistic, socially accepted behaviors now, right? I genuinely do believe that. Men are now resigning from stepping up to, you know, fulfilling their masculine roles. Alongside with the advent of, you know, social media, you've got pornography, you've got all these hyper dopaminergic stimulus that's sapping the male essence away, right? It's completely destroying men's natural drive to want to, you know, become, well, more masculine, right? And now you've also got certain political movements that are, you know, bringing in this concept of like fluidity, and it's just creating a lot of different rifts between, you know, the male focus, the male power, the male essence, and even to do with femininity too. I see there's a rift between, you know, like the feminine movement within a lot of women. Okay, a lot of them are being lied to. A lot of people are being lied to, saying that, yeah, you'll step into this role, you know, forget about trying to like gel with the opposite sex. Just, you know, live on your own terms, live free, you know, make your own money, secure that bag. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. I do believe everybody should have the ability to like control and harness their own like financial income, because that is just the current sort of situation of the world, right? You need that in order to survive. It's a resource. But when that becomes the only focus and people start getting discarded and used as objects, that's when things go wrong. So yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a rant with just this one point. There's a lot to unpack here, man. There's so many good questions. So another question from Joey was, how can men break out of the don't talk about your problems programming? So, you know what? Having Joe here would have been amazing. And And actually, a reference to the podcast that I do the production for, Inside of Mind, with Tom and Joe. These guys basically started that. They just decided one day to get together and talk about their problems. Just literally just talk about it. But from what I saw, you know, initially as an outsider looking in, I think the first thing is to build a rapport with at least one person where you know that you'll be free from judgment, right? So even if, you know, you look at some of these communities where they have, you know, like these support groups, support circles, a lot of men need this. You know, for the longest time, I didn't talk about my issues and it just ate me up, especially in the military, because it's a very hyper-masculine organization where if you show weakness, you're a pussy, basically. Like, that's the way that they looked at it, and nobody would want to work with you because you're seen as the weak link. But how men can start talking about their problems, for me personally, I think there's a stepwise approach that you can take to this. So before you actually start talking about your problems, you need to first of all be able to articulate what your issue is, what your problems are within yourself. And the best thing that I did was journaling. I know it sounds like a very cliche, surface level self-help guru, woo-woo, mystic meg bullshit piece of advice, but genuinely journaling and writing down what was going on within, being able to see, like physically see what was down on the paper, and then almost like recite it to myself to then see what actually stuck and what clicked. Because as much as I'm an advocate for, you know, mental health, and we need to be able to raise more awareness, especially in the men's mental health space, a common problem that I see in both genders is people suffer more mentally in their head than they do in reality. So it's also about understanding your situation and understanding what your actual problems are, and then building from that. Start by having the conversation with yourself, develop a rapport with someone you can trust, and then gently start speaking more and more about it. And then, you know, especially amongst guys, eventually, even in a group of guys, even if there's a group of, like, you know, these alpha dudes who are like, yeah, bro, we just kind of like soldier through it and whatever, there's bound to be at least one person who will, you know, after all the other guys have walked away, be like, listen, man, I know how you feel. I've been there. I literally just had a conversation with one guy from another community. He just opened up to me about how he's struggled, right? And then the day before that, one of the clients that I've made in my test group, he opened up about what he's been going through. It's all about building trust. And I think within the male community, we have this element of bravado where we need to seem to be all right, because that again is a masculine trait, to not show fear, right? To not show a form of weakness, because our primal brains tell us, well, if we show weakness, we're going to get eaten, right? And there are people who are like emotional vultures. There are people out there in business who would seek to exploit your weakness and destroy you. But the mental and the emotional, phases of life, or rather the mental and emotional bodies of our lives, they also need to be nurtured. And there's a way to do that. And guys, if you're in relationships, you know, if you have a partner, don't be afraid to speak to your partner, okay? Just trust me on this. Either way, it'll be a win-win for you. Either she will listen to your problems and she will help you and she will actually pay attention, or you'll know that she's not right for you. Think about that for a second. If your woman isn't prepared to listen to your problems and thinks less of you as a man when you tell her, hey babe, look, I'm actually struggling with this, or whatever it is, she is not worthy to be your woman. Simple. Shit bust. That's my firm philosophy. And I'm a firm believer that one way or another, whether it's now or later on down the line, people's colors will always shine through. And people's behaviors speaks for itself. And you will arrive at that destination one way or another. I'm a firm believer of that. I'm gonna try and keep these a little bit short, but man, there's a lot here. There's a lot to unpack. So another one from Joey is, why are young men turning to potentially toxic role models? Okay, so for me, a big thing is social media and the fronting of the attractive life, right? So let's just take a classic example. So I actually stand in a very neutral ground with the Tates, because I can see a lot of value that they provide and that they deliver. And a lot of it is in the form of these cold, harsh truths. What I don't agree with personally is the whole like treating women as though they're objects. That, I feel like that's where the toxicity comes from, right? The toxicity comes from not so much the whole like, you've got to grind and you've got to be, you know, this whole like Sigma male grind set philosophy of life. I think the toxicity comes from the way in which that men are being primed to treat women, right? It always comes down to this battle of the sexes thing. I saw this for the first time when I was like maybe 8 years old. I saw this in a newspaper, the battle of the sexes, and I never really understood what that meant. And over time, I've actually started to realize that, yeah, that's what it ultimately comes down to. It's about the power. It's about having power, right? I see nothing wrong with pushing yourself to be the best version of yourself, right? And that can be seen in many different forms. Whether you want to be, you know, as rich as possible, whether you want to be as jacked as possible, if you want to have the financial freedom to just go wherever, you want to buy like 5 Lamborghinis, or you want to buy a private jet, or, you know, build your mum like a 7-bedroom mansion, right? You get the point. There's nothing wrong with that. I think another layer of toxicity is making it seem like it's easy. Making it seem like also, if you're not doing that, then you're a failure at life. Not everybody is primed. Not everybody is destined to be a, you know, 8-9 figure entrepreneur who owns multiple businesses and drives like luxury sports cars. That's not, you know, in Sanskrit it's called kismet. Kismet is like fate, destiny. Not everybody has that written for them. I'm a firm believer of that. I believe that, yes, you can do many things across the space of your life, across the span of your life, right? Situationally dependent, okay? A refugee running away from a war-torn country is going to have a very different life trajectory compared to somebody who was born in Beverly Hills to, you know, a celebrity family, right? It's going to be very, very different. So I think that's where young men are getting, you know, misled. And the thing is, right, like the reason why they turn to them is because of the allure, right? Because nobody is actually out there trying to guide men. Well, there are a few people, I've seen a few, but it's like, it's not enough. We don't have enough good male role models that are stepping up there, right? All because those who do try are either going to get attacked by, again, these people who buy into these mindsets, right? And they can't be asked for it. They don't want to be bothered by it, or simply because they just believe it's a myth, that it doesn't exist, and that masculinity is a lost cause and it's every man for himself. And I personally don't believe that. I believe we need more positive male role models, but the sexiness of, yeah, you know, hustle day and night, buy the Bugatti, have like 15 models by your side, you know, just stacking cash, smoking a cigar, and just, you know, fucking young money, cash flow, or whatever. that all has that appeal, but it's very superficial. It's very fickle, right? And what we're seeing is a lot of people are getting brought in on the superficial level, but then they're here. They're on the surface. And then eventually when they get a little bit older, or if they look for a certain level of depth, they find that these role models don't have that. They feel betrayed, and then they completely repel against it, right? So that's, you know, kind of like in tandem with why young men turn into potentially toxic role models. But also, now how can we help repair that? I think that there needs to be more balance, there needs to be more harmony, and there needs to be the understanding that yes, you can have that life, but you need to be prepared to pay the price, because everything in this life, everything has a cost. So Dan Goldfield, who's also from Cortex, asked, how can men cut through the noise of conflicting recommendations for how to improve themselves online and cut through what works? Yeah, this is kind of similar to like, you know, the toxic role models question. I think personally, me, from my own personal experience, what really helped me cut through the noise, and I'm going to be honest with you, I've only been doing this properly for like the last 9 months. Like cutting through the noise, cutting through the distractions, is first of all having that conversation with yourself on what is my purpose? What do I believe my purpose on this earth is? Who am I? And that's a really big, it's also a very vague, it's a very deep question. And I feel like that's something that every man needs to explore before he starts formulating a battle plan to navigate this battlefield of life, because it has so many different pockets of conflict, distractions, right? In order to cut through that noise, you need to know the self. And for myself, you know, I did so many different things. I went into the medical field. I resonated with that. I come from a medical background. I went into the medical field. I left, I left the military. I left the medical field. I then decided to try my hand at content creation because I could see that content was coming up. I then tried to do like holistic well-being in the form of like mindset coaching. That didn't really take. Then I tried becoming a yoga instructor. I became a yoga instructor. I then became a personal trainer. I then learned about videography. I got deeper into videography. I then started to work within male self-development cohorts and teach lessons there. After that, I moved into the commercial personal training space because I thought, this is where I want to be. After about 3 months, I realized actually there's certain elements of it that resonate with me, but I don't see myself being a PT for the rest of my life. So I think you've also got to try lots of different things. You need to embrace the chaos and the confusion. It's going to sound like a very controversial thing that I'm saying here, but I hope that you see the sense in it. You have to embrace the chaos and the confusion in order to get clarity and direction, right? Because it's like that expression, you know, it's the calm before the storm. And when you walk through the storm, you get through that initial barrier where it's shit, like it is shit, where you're like, I don't know what's going on, I don't know where I'm going, whatever. Then you get that brief moment of clarity. You're in the eye of the storm. And then you can see, okay, I know now what direction I want to go, but you're still in the eye of the storm. So whether you're going, you know, front, left, or right, or even sometimes going back, because sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes you need a setback in order to gain clarity on where you want to go. You then need to break through that next barrier of the storm, but you are never the same. The man that goes through the storm is never the same. So I think in order to cut through that and cut through the conflicting recommendations of, something as simple as, go to the gym 6 days a week if you want to get jacked. And then you've got people who do like minimalist training coaching. Like I tried that for a period of time as well, and I had some success with it. And I was like, well, I only go 3 times and I'm seeing good results. It just means that I'm more intense with my sessions. You've just got to figure out what suits your lifestyle, what suits your personality, what suits your archetype better. And maybe that's an idea for another video, you know, how to find what kind of archetype you are. So yeah, I think selectively consuming the social media and the people that you watch also will greatly help with that, because there is a ton of information out there, and honestly there's a lot of good info out there, but there's so much interconnecting and overlapping with each other that it just creates this like overstimulated like